I'm the Sudden Valley Homeowners Association Treasurer, and I'd like to state that this board has a land acknowledgement and an anti-racism statement that we support that is available on our website. And for roll call, I see that our president, AJ Tischletter, is here. We've got Sonia, Steffi, Josh, Brian, Linda, Keith has an excused absence, and Joel Dobbins are here. Finance committee members are Kara, Jean, Callie, Gail has an excused absence, and I have not heard from Alex, so I am assuming that he is either coming or will be here late. And we have our accounting manager, Joel Heberling, here as well, so I think we are good to go. I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
And do I need a second?
And we're big enough second.
Thank you. And that will move us along to our new business. I am going to hand over the meeting to AJ for opening remarks at this moment.
All right. I just want to thank the board and finance committee for being here and accommodating the schedule changes that we had to make here. And thank you to the executives, the audit committee, and our staff for working so hard to get to this point. I just kind of wanted to touch quick on some of the efforts that have been going on over the last year and a half that started in long range planning and culminated with the strategic planning team. And so last year in long range planning, we implemented a new planning process. We adopted using the Whatcom County Comprehensive Plan framework for our Sudden Valley Community Plan so that we can be consistent with our greater community jurisdictions and how they go about planning for the greater community of Whatcom County. We started last year with a survey of the community. It helped us build some baseline data on satisfaction with our facilities and amenities. We had a number of planning or capital type questions to help get input from our community to help guide some of our capital planning decisions and larger decision-making efforts that we needed. This year, we started this strategic planning process, and the strategic planning team included our staff, long range planning, and the board. We have worked so far to create a new mission and vision statement. We established some core values that we believe we should be adhering to in our day-to-day business and lives in the community. And then we developed some overarching community strategic priorities, and those are kind of overarching over, staff, the board, community in general. What we developed was sustainability, collaboration, the natural beauty, recreation, civic engagement, and quality of life, and diversity and inclusiveness. This whole process is essential to Sudden Valley's long-term community stability. The mission, vision, values, and strategic priorities are established to build a framework that will serve as the guiding principles for our board and staff to act in the best interest of the community. And that's kind of an overarching, just a quick overview, I guess, of what we've used to help build this budget process and help guide us in making some decisions. And so then I'll pass it back to Kim now for some of her remarks.
Yeah, and I also wanted to acknowledge Rachel Tucker is present, our HR manager, and Brian Krulak, our golf head. So I didn't mention them, and I don't want to mention them as being present as well. And I just wanted to make some opening remarks to give some context to the challenges of this budget season. And I just want to say, y'all, it was very challenging this year. In addition to it being my first year as the treasurer, we were handed a deficit budget that was not sustainable and not responsible by our previous leader, who opted to leave the organization sooner than expected. And so the executive committee had to step up and create a sustainable budget within 2 weeks. Most of these folks work full time, and we had to work around our jobs with early morning meetings at 7 a.m. and late evening meetings to pull all of this together. And I will say that everyone did step forward and make this happen. The budget was revised to be balanced. It was zeroed out, and it was created with data-driven decisions. It reflects all stakeholders. It reflects the needs of staff as well as the community. As AJ referenced, we used the survey, the results of the survey from long range planning to include the community's input on what they say their priorities are for this community. We also kept in mind the bylaws, dues, limitations, and the current reserve study. And I'm really proud to say that people pulled together and put many hours in. Joel Heverling and Sonia and AJ and I became fast friends, speaking late at night and and just, pulling this together. The budget is solid. It's balanced. There is no assessment increase for 2022. All employees will receive a 3% pay raise. The budget maintains our current staffing level, and we also have an additional maintenance full-time employee that will be added with this budget. And we seek and to remind everyone here of our purpose tonight. We'd like your questions regarding the budget. We are not here to create the budget, but we're here to look at what's being presented, to refine it and make it better based on all the eyes of our leaders. And then later we will take it to our community. So I appreciate everyone that's here to contribute. And with that, I am going to hand the facilitation over to Joel Heverling, our accounting manager, who's going to go over the departmental budget summary for 2022. And hopefully you'll be able to share your screen if necessary, so we have a visual portion to all of the numbers that you're going to throw our way, Joel.
Okay, thank you. Let me just share the screen here. Okay, can everyone see what I'm looking at?
If you're looking at numbers, then yes, Joel.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I was looking at guitars before this, but
We can see your Amazon shopping list, Joel.
yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go over, we're going to do this a little differently than how we did it last year. We felt it'd be more efficient if I just go ahead and just cover the entire operating budget. That way we can just run through it at once. We have Brian on hand for golf and turf, and Rachel is also on hand as well to answer questions. And so what I'll do is when I run this through this thing, I'm not going to go like GL line item by GL line item. I'm going to just hit the any sort of big swings, right? Any area where you see the GL like changing, not just by the percentage, but also by the dollar amount. So I'm not going to talk about a GL that goes up 300%,
Okay.
but then it only went up $50. You know, we're talking about like, and vice versa. So we're talking about just a big, you know, thousands of dollars swings going on here. between the two.
Whoa.
Steph, you gotta pause or mute.
I'm going to stop sharing just for a second because I have the wrong document open. Let me grab the right one. Okay. Okay, this is the one that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and just, we'll just hit the high point. So the bottom line in terms of what the dues amount will be in 2022. So the dues amount will remain unchanged with this budget. So 2021, right now we're paying $144.31 to develop lots. 2022 will also pay $144.31. So no change to the overall budget. The one change that you'll see that's going on here between these categories is a change that has to be made, which is the operation special assessment that's going up 3%, which is called for in that SGM. So it's going from 1144 to 1178. And then the difference, then we're decreasing operating dues from 5897 to 5863 to make up for that. No change to surf roads mailboxes in terms of the monthly amounts that you pay out of your dues. So this is basically this region right here is that $144.31. These are the categories that are being paid for. 5863 ops, 1178 for the special assessment, rec operation special assessment. 3610 of that is surf, $37.13 roads, mailboxes 67 cents. And surf roads mailboxes between 2021 2022 stays exactly the same. No, so we're not changing any of that. It's just the ops and the operation rec special assessment amounts. Undeveloped lots, it's the same story. So undeveloped lots, 134.67 2021 total dues. In 2022, it'll also be 134.67. The only change is between regular operations and then operations rec special assessment. That's it. The other categories are the same. And in case anyone's wondering, the surf roads mailboxes amounts are the same whether it's developed lots or undeveloped lots. It's just what changes would be the operations portion of it. Now I threw together, so when Kim sent out the handout to you guys, to the board and the finance committee, this page at this point, when we last talked, last night at 9 p.m. or something like that, when we were putting together that document before it went out to you guys. So this page had not yet been touched up to put in there, but when this thing gets posted to the website, then you saw the same page last year, so you'll see this again showing up when it goes to the website. So it's just one of the pages that precedes the graphs, I believe, in the handout. And this page is just basically showing you the difference between 2021 budget, 2022 proposed budget. This region up here is basically giving you each of the departments by breakdown. I will say with the one difference, the marina, this is the marina department. We put it down here because this has a net income that it uses to contribute to operating dues. So basically, marina is decreasing your operating dues in a sense. It's contributing to operations, the net income. And then here's the regular dues right here. This is after the collection rate is being taken into account with this. And then the rec special assessment, you can see how it's going up from one year to the next. Here, you'll see where it's dropping between the 2 years, obviously, because operations is going down a little. And also, and I should point out too, that last year, or for the year right now in Forest 2021, we used a 95% collection rate. Then we built into this budget for a 93% so we're being a little more conservative because we don't know precisely what will go on next year. So it'll be a 93% collection rate. And the good thing about a 93% collection rate is it's a little conservative, and for a good reason, that it actually gives us, it could help us if it's higher than that. So if we have some other expenses that come in that we didn't plan for. It could absorb those types of expenses. Now, tonight before I signed on, I actually ran the collection rate, in case anyone's wondering, which I'm sure you are, through. So this is the most up-to-date collection rate through June. And the June year-to-date collection rate, let's see, so in May, at the end of May, it was year-to-date 92.2% year-to-date at the end of May. And then so for June, the good thing is we've moved up. Now we're 94.5% year-to-date at the end of June. And I know that Angie's had some really favorable responses, like when she's reached out to people who had owed some dues, and she's had some really good responses with some people in terms of people paying like past dues owed, and the collection rate just in general picking up a little, which is good to see for this year. But so for next year at 93% collection rate, if for every percent that we come in more than that, that's actually $21,695 that gets contributed to the bottom line, which could absorb some sort of unforeseen expenses, whether or not it was utilities or whatever. So that's the good thing with that. And this page, when we put this on the website, this page, these pages will show up too. And then this is just a chart, of course, which is all this chart shows is the revenue sources coming in, capital, mailboxes, your regular dues. It's just a pie chart of the sources of revenue coming in and what they are. So there's the marina right here, operations, rec, special assessment in dark blue, surf right here in this mustard color, whatever. And then the next chart that follows this is it shows you what your operation dues are paying for. So if I scroll down again real fast, so your operating dues, $70.41 right here. And then where does that $70.41 go to? Here's a breakdown on this chart of, what it actually is being contributed to. Oh, I'm sorry, that's 2021. So the 2021 will be on there too. Here's the 2022 chart. But that will be posted to the website as well here eventually, or soon, I should say. I probably won't spend too much time on this. This is just all this page is doing, and this will be on the website too when it gets posted, is it's just showing you, it's just comparing 2020, 2021, 2022, showing you the total number of lots and how these dues get calculated. So, here's the developed lot section, the undeveloped lot section here. And then it's just showing you basically down here would be the capital, the surf roads mailboxes, which would then give you a bottom line of total dues coming in close to $5 million. And that's just total dues. So it's adding up all the vacant lots, all the developed lot dues together with that collection rate, 93%, that's what's giving you that $4.99 million. Now, what we could do at this point, what I'll do is I'm going to quickly run through the operating budget. So I'm just going to, now everyone was emailed this in terms of the finance committee, the board last night. When we post to the website, this will be on here too, just like it was on there last year. So what I'll just do is I'll just do a quick run through. I'm only going to hit where we had any sort of mentionable increase or decrease from the year before, and then at that point, then we could take questions. Now, before I even do that, I'm going to skip right down to the page after this, and I'll just show you this real quick. So this shows you this is the 2022 budget draft, and this shows you the FTE count, where you can see right here. And then this is comparing it to, that was the FTE count on the 2021 budget, 2020 budget, 2019 budget. So you can see the FTEs by year. So this year it's dropping a little bit from 2021. I'll get into that one when I walk through the budget. But the FTEs are staying fairly similar to last year and the year before, quite frankly. Okay, so. So on this page on the common costs, if you're wondering in the operating budget, where do the dues actually show up for operating dues? That will be in the common costs department. And common costs, takes basically the things that are common to the whole organization, like property taxes, legal fees, that sort of stuff. Insurance, like the property insurance and stuff like that, taxes. So the top page, you'll see this is in 2022. Here is the actual dues amount, this $2.017 million dues. And then there's the anticipated bad debts, which is basically gives you the 2.017 gives you a 93% collection rate on the dues coming in. Okay, so in terms, like I said, I'm just going to hit on anything that's really mentionable, like any sort of thing like this, like, this went up 37%, but the difference is it only went from 150 to 205. Obviously, we're skipping over stuff like that. We're just going to hit on any sort of mentionable type difference. So property real estate, this is just self-explanatory. Property taxes have gone up, and we're just anticipating an increase in property taxes, and that's really about it for that line item. Legal services, we just build in a little bit of a buffer, went from 50,000 to 56,000, but this is just a component of how much in terms of legal services. We don't think the legal services will be anything to, like any sort of real big increase in 2022 right now, nothing foreseeable. Insurance premiums, obviously this is another area that will take an increase from one year to the next. And then we just get this from the insurance, from our hub insurance broker. What do you think the insurance would go up? And that's basically where we get that number. Now going down into the accounting department, in some areas here, we've increased revenue, especially where it's, looking back on like prior years, especially where it's warranted to be an increase. So here's a good example of title and recording fees right here. So, and that's really, when it comes to an increase in revenue, unless I say otherwise, basically we're just looking back at what it was in prior years and just truing it up to pull it more in line with what we feel it would be in 2022. Same thing with payroll service fees, same sort of thing, just looking back on prior years. And that's what's giving you an increase right here. Audit and tax service fees went from 27.5 to 45,000. So what we're doing is we're just building more in for like the level 1 reserve study. So the reserve study, so we pay for the audit, tax return reserve study out of this 7,000 GL in accounting. So we're just building in like anticipated increase in cost for, especially at the level 1. Okay, so now with salaries, and now keep in mind the salaries. So we have 37.27 FTEs for 2022, 37.77 for 2021. So now there are a couple of areas where we kind of realigned where people were going to be putting their time to, like in terms of the budget amount. Now, one area is the collection specialist, which would be Angie. So last year and like this year's budget, 25% of her time was budgeted for in ACC security. So we're just realigning that 25% back over to accounting. So we took from ACC and put it back into accounting. Now, what's also in the salary line item is we've added, so for Nikki, who has been working here through, we just paid her out through Express for a temporary, and that was budgeted like in prior years. So now Nikki has been brought on staff as a part of that assessment that Glenn talked about. She's been brought on staff half-time, so as a part-time employee. Now, in prior years, that would have been paid for out of this. So it's not like an additional, like a completely new cost. It's being offset through here, other professional services. So you see in 2021, we'll just say 18,000 budgeted. Now this has been zeroed out to 0. And now it's basically that the bulk of that is up here now in payroll tax or in salaries for Nikki. So we anticipate Nikki would probably come in at halftime at approximately 26,000 terms of the salaries for her, but then it's offset by a decrease from the other professional services. Now we're into facilities. So we're past it. So we've gone through common cost accounting. Now we're into facilities. So here's another area. It's really not that big of an increase, but I'll just point it out. Area C, storage rental revenue. So we're just increasing that just to reflect that we're taking in more money for the rental income. As you can see, even from 2020, how 2020 was even close to 24,000. Okay, for payroll now, here's another realignment for facilities. So now in the past, in 2021, 2020, so Jacob's time, the turf supervisor, Jacob, so 50% of his time was historically billed to turf. Then the other 50% of his time was billed in here in facilities. So now that 50% of his time that was billed into facilities for the position, which is now Jeremy, that has now been realigned. So it's been removed from facilities. And now Jeremy's time, 85% of that is billed to turf, and the other 15% is billed to parks. So that's basically what is driving this change in facilities within the payroll amounts. The other big category was utilities. Now, we didn't change utility line items in every single department, but for facilities, we felt it was especially important to change the line item, at least in here, to build in some extra amount to anticipate, additional increase in utilities costs. And that's really what's driving this. Okay. So now we have IT support and services, $8,040 here in facilities. And I believe this was the maintenance connection software that we're getting rid of this software. So we're zeroing this out. Golf management. Okay, so now the good thing about golf is, page really on 16. Okay, I'll point this out. So golf enterprise, so this line item right here. So in the 2021 budget, they budgeted for a $25,000, $400 loss in golf. Now, for this year, Brian has budgeted, so this golf enterprise combines golf and turf together. Now, this year, Brian has anticipated a break-even budget. So there's not being budgeted for a $25,400 loss. Now it's actually being budgeted for a really small profit, $126, which is good this year. And that's what is driving this golf income being increased by 9.17%. The anticipated additional revenue that Brian feels that he will have coming in during 2022, which is essentially, like I said, zeroed out the golf budget. Now golf is it's not just break even, it's over $100 past break even.
Joel, might be worth mentioning that actuals for the last 2 years, golf broke even or showed a small profit as opposed to the budget. It actually performed better than budget. So.
That's actually correct what Brian said. So like golf was budgeted for that net loss of around 24,000 last year, but golf in 2020 so ended out with a slightly over $54,000 net income. So revenue wise, golf has been doing really well, which I believe lent into Brian changing his forecasted revenue numbers. I mean, the only real big increase was not that big of an increase, but just the website maintenance. I guess, Brian, this is for your website software.
Let's see. So the cost of the so we added we added an app this year. So we anticipate spending more. It's going to go into website maintenance. The cost to manage this app is to host this app is about $3,000 a year.
Okay. Now, like I said, golf's like for this golf management right here. When you look at the department, you'll see this net income, so to speak, for golf, 615,485. Keep in mind that that is offset by the turf department, which becomes the golf enterprise. So both of those are combined together on the financial statements. When I present like monthly financial statements, then combining golf and turf operations, or golf and turf departments together for the golf operations. Now getting into the rec, of course, the increase for rec will be, this is the rec special assessment, which went up by 3%. But then keep in mind the collection rate went from 95 to 93%, so that went down. So that's why you won't see a straight across the board 3% increase. It's combining the two effects of that. Okay, salary benefits. So really the only difference driving this salary is actually a decrease of over 5% in the rec department. It's basically the same positions are there. It's just different pay rates that are currently being paid out. That's it. That's the only thing driving that. But there are no changes in FTEs to rec, pools, parks combined. And as Kim pointed out, so basically, so there's a 3% pay increase built into, what that means is 3% for the current salaries, the current pay rates right now, not like the prior budget, but just the current pay rates right now, 3% to that. And that's how the 3% is working its way into the salaries line item. Okay. So there's nothing, reason why I'm scrolling past those pages is there's just nothing notable. There's no real big increase, decrease between the 2021 budget and the 2022 budget worth mentioning, actually. And the same thing with their payroll. So their payroll is staying somewhat essentially flat. The only difference between 2021 and 2022, which is even driving any sort of a difference of this change, is just the current pay rates right now. So, but the number of FTEs are still there. So like, for example, we have a vacant maintenance manager positions. That position is still there in the budget, so it could be filled. Now, here's the difference in terms of maintenance. What we've done in 2022, unlike in 2021 and 2020, is so we've built in $30,000, and then obviously the payroll taxes, but we built in $30,000 for weather response, for like snow removal, some sort of major weather related event. Now this is an area, so here's an area that, you know, we could use it. We might use more than this, we have in the past, or might not have to use all of it. It's just dependent on the weather, but we put 30,000 in there as a buffer in case it needs to be used. This is another category to where, like with weather related events, like in 2019, when approximately 96,000 or so was actually, so they tapped UDR for that. So this year, now in 2020, maintenance just shouldered it, same with basically so far in 2021, but it wasn't budgeted for. Now in 2022, we're actually building in some budget for weather related type stuff that could just eat, you know, the operational budget part of it.
Can I say something just real quick?
Sure.
I don't want Darren seeing this and thinking that there's an open position and he's not gonna. So the maintenance manager position is actually filled. We just we left that open for whatever we needed to do additionally in maintenance. But Darren is the maintenance manager, right?
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't want him to think it. We're leaving that position open and
Yeah.
for somebody else. I just thought I would clarify that.
Yeah. which then means the position that Darren was occupying as a regular maintenance person, now that position is open for to be filled in the future. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Sonia. I forgot to mention that. Now, of course, equipment repair and maintenance, we have a difference between the two, but this is just a function of what maintenance actually thinks that they could actually spend on repair and maintenance. That's really, like, if you look back in some years, it's been more than that. Like in 2020, it was 20,000, but in the years prior to that, it was around 15,000 or less. So 15,000 is a good amount to put in there. And it's actually higher also than 2021. And same thing for, so in this case, maintenance, we've now buffered maintenance a little when it comes to repair and maintenance, tools and equipment, vehicle repair and maintenance, for additional repairs or whatever is needed. And same thing for just basically equipment lease and rental gone. It went from 1,800 to 5,000. It's just anticipating more the rental of equipment or whatever needs to be rented for maintenance in 2022. Now for the marina, you'll notice, now here's a notable difference between marina income of 118 to now 150. So what we've done is we've built in approximately a 10% anticipated increase in fees for the wet slips, dry slips, wet dry combo slips. And that's what is driving this increase in the budget. There's just, I mean, it's not even really worth mentioning, but since I already started talking about it, just in salaries, you'll notice it's just ticked down just a little. And this is just all this is, no change in FTE counts or positions. It's just a matter of the current pay rates right now going on. Other professional services for Marina was, they just given a little haircut down to 5,000. It's just, and basically just looking back over the years, 5,000 is probably a good conservative amount to budget for Marina for other professional services. Things that could go to this would be stuff like, like Express or whatever. Now, the good thing about the admin budget is this is, quite frankly, the least exciting of all the budgets in terms of any sort of notable changes. There really aren't any notable changes worth talking about. I mean, the only one.
Joel, this is all very exciting. Please don't say that everything is riveting here.
Yeah, well, actually, when it comes to the budget, the goal is for it to be boring in terms of the changes, from one year to the next.
But still riveting all the same.
Unless it's revenue changes, then you want those to be exciting, So recruiting expenses is the only real area that went up, and that's just a function of looking back at prior years, how much we're spending on recruiting. So this is just basically truing this amount up for anticipated expenditures. And in terms of admin, that's really the only thing we're talking about for admin. Now, parks, really the only difference here is parks is just a function of the current rates for the no change in FTEs. Well, with the one exception that we're now putting 15% of the turf manager into the parks department. That's outside of that, there are no other changes in FTEs, and then just comparing it to current rates at the time. that's really about it for parks. Okay. Now we're getting down into pools. So pools, so we adjusted back the main pool income from the budget from 2021 to 2022. We're just being more conservative in the income coming in. Really, by 50% from down from, so we just dropped it in half, 5,500. Now, the only other area for pools would be this pool management. We budgeted 25,000 in 2021, 2022, we're budgeting 13,000. And this is just an area where we feel that we're taking a look at the contract and we feel that we do a much better job with it, by renegotiating the contract. And that's really about it for pool management. Okay, new home construction. So now we're into ACC security department. And in the past years, we've been really conservative, very cautiously conservative on these new home construction starts. So we said 35,000 in 2021. We're now bumping this up to 75,000. And really all you have to do is just, with the exception of 2020, which was an odd year, obviously, if you look back at any of the prior years, you would see that it's far double than that, or triple. And basically, given the economy and the boom in the real estate market, we feel that it's appropriate to bump that up to 75,000. Hazardous tree removal, we're just basically just realigning that by looking at past years, how much we've paid for with this. And that's also another area that if for some reason, it was felt that more money is needed, they could go to UDR for this as well. But just looking back at past years, we felt that 50,000 was a good number to plug in there. Now, payroll benefits, okay, for ACC security. So this is going to be the one area where you'll see a big swing in terms of percentage wise and even dollar amount. And really all this is the, as I touched on before, Angie, in collections, 25% of her time was budgeted in ACC security. So we moved that from here to the accounting department, and that open position with the ACC security manager, that position has been discontinued for now. And that's one area where an FTE was clipped out at this point. The only other notable area is the ACC consultant. 2021 is 27,500. 2022, we've now increased it to 50,000. This area is just going to be more difficult to sort of forecast this, because before, like when John Gordon was doing this, it was basically on a like when he would finish an inspection, it was like a set amount per step in the inspection. And the new contract that we have at this point, it's a one-year contract. It's an hourly rate. So this is just something that we'll just have to monitor and take a look at over time as the billings come in. Okay. So turf care, you'll see there's an increase in the salaries, but basically what this really is, it's like I said before, when the prior turf care manager, Jake, at 50% of his time was over there in facilities. Now, 85% of the turf care manager is now billed into turf care at this point. So that's really what's driving this difference between the salaries. So it's basically, it's a change in FTE from one department to another, but the FTEs as the organization as a whole does not change by doing that. Now, the last few pages, which I won't touch on, but I'll just tell you, the last few pages are, if you wanted to look at an all department summary, so you want to see the organization as a whole. So starting with this is where it's basically when you see like the different line items, like the GL line items. In the all department summary, it's adding up every single GL line item, no matter what department it's in. So, so if you were looking at repair and maintenance, whether it's in the facility department or the maintenance department, it'll be combined together in the all department summary. And so the all department summary will summarize everything on a GL line item basis. So if you wanted to know, gee, what would be the utilities for the whole darn organization, you could just go to the all department summary and it would break it out for you here. So the bottom line is the expenses are going up by 3.11% in the budget. However, the income is also going up by 3.11% as well. And that's a combination of increases like in golf income and new home construction start income and stuff like that. And that's basically the entire organization, like as a whole, running through it. So at this point, if anyone had any questions, then we could take your questions at this point. Linda?
I have a question. Oh,
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jean. I'll
No.
wait. Go
yeah,
ahead.
no, I just had a question. So are the capital expenses in this budget part, or are the capital expenses in a different part?
The capital expenses are in a different part.
Okay,
I
all right.
I don't think that we were going to get into the capital tonight. So I believe tonight the plan was just to run through the operations.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure I understood that. All right, thanks.
Yeah. Oh, sure, yeah.
So Joel, I've got a question, and it's got to do with ACC and security. It's got to do with new home starts. So the budget for 2021 was 35,000.
That's right.
Our basic cost for everybody that submits a new home start is $3,500.
Uh-huh.
That the 35,000 transfers into 10 starts.
Right.
The
Yeah.
75,000 that you've got here is an odd number. It's like somehow to me, if you're going to increase this needs to be realistically by what you're charging members, unless you're changing that amount to refer that. If you take 75,000 and divide it by 3,500, you get an odd number.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm wondering why they did that. The other thing is that normally that when John did it, and it shouldn't vary that much, that you're just going to automatically give somebody 50, that you're going to increase the rate that he modifies those by. I would hope that if basically somebody puts in their $3,500, that only that I think it's 2,750 before was captured by John per home. And I would hope that if we have a contract for that, that somewhere along the line that's being matched to the starts.
Yeah, I see. That's the part where let me just go and find it. This is the one line item right here where I pointed out this is where we're going, where we can't be at this point, unfortunately, like it'll be hard to forecast this because you're right. John charged when he did the new home inspection fees, it was by step he would charge so much. So it was like a completely known thing versus this. It's a one-year contract that we have at this point with Joel Carter, and he charges by the hour.
Well, I understand that, but if you're collecting $3,500 from a homeowner, so that would be okay if he reviewed their stuff and he actually spent, and we actually paid him $4,000 for that home.
What we
That's fine.
calculated that on, Joel put the 75,000 in there, but that number of what we're predicting for the consultant is based on about a 77% margin of whatever the new home intake is. Then you
Yep.
can estimate that he's going to get about 77%. We're tracking that, but so far we've only gotten, I think, one invoice. And so we'll watch that because that contract is, like Joel says, an hourly contract. So we're going to have to watch it very close and to make sure that it stays on those numbers. But we just only have one right now. And then we do have the ability to pull out of that contract at any time if those numbers don't stay in line with what you're talking about. But we anticipate it'll be pretty much exactly what you're saying. So even if you had $100,000 in there, it'll reflect about a 77% payout to the consultant. And so,
But that's why I'm saying this $75,000 number that's in here correlates to nothing for the fees that you charge for new home construction.
Well,
There's no correlation between the 75,000 and the 3,500 per home. Now, the 35,000 was last year. That's because there were 10 starts anticipated.
I
That
mean,
doesn't work out with just
we just
putting a
basically,
number in there.
we just basically doubled it in a sense. So it comes out to about 21.4 new home starts, if you want to think about it that way.
Well, but that's why I'm saying it's kind of a weird thing because you're really not matching it up with what your fee is. That's all. And in the past, that's always been the case. We might make over that amount of money, but you were able at least to tie it back to the amount of money that we charge for every new home start. It's just a weird way to do things.
well, it's not a normal budget item since that consultant is entirely compensated through those home starts. So it's one of those that it's really not going to impact anywhere else in the budget except right there.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and hopefully if you don't have 21 starts next year, do we know how many starts we've got this year that you felt that was a good number for next year?
Well, I mean, like in this column, the 2021 year to date actuals, of course, now the most complete financial statements that are now in this column is in April. I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll just run the GL.
Yeah, because they're just starting it now. Because ACC made the note that they're basically meeting every week because they have new home starts to review, new builds. And I just wondered if anybody had a number.
So far, we have $70,000 through July. And that's
to see they're starting to come in.
So these are the latest numbers in the system. So we have 70,000 already through July.
So it could be that we put too few home starts for next year because
Right.
it looks like we're on track to blow way by that 35,000. So we can just make that adjustment.
Well,
Now, looking at the GL, you'll be able to tell how many you've got. Joel should be, the GL tells exactly how many and when and that sort of thing. The only other thing I wanted to talk about, because, I just, it's weird that 75,000 doesn't match with a number that we use for
I
fees.
mean, Linda, you're only talking about 1,500 is what it comes down to.
That's true. I'm just saying, it just
Yeah, I mean,
doesn't
like
match. It doesn't match.
If we were exact and said 21 home starts, the only difference is $1,500, quite frankly.
Or if you wanted to go higher, like you said, you've already got $70,000 in there this year.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something you need to look at more realistically if we have if there's that many home starts that are coming through here right now through July. Definitely. The only other thing is you've reduced the hazard trees. And if I'm not mistaken, we had a discussion where we borrowed money from the UDR to, because they'd almost spent their way through the 60,000 and asked for another 40,000 for this year, and yet you're going to reduce it next year?
It's in several locations. So there's hazard trees. There's also some over into the capital spending plans also. So it's in several different
And
locations.
you've got trees in capital?
No, we don't have trees.
It's got trees in the culvert. That's part of the culvert.
You mean the CBC work?
Right.
Yeah, Sonia, I'm just talking about that. And you and I both, the UDR that we still haven't gotten the full information on for that additional $40,000 that they wanted for additional trees, hazard trees to take down. And I'm just saying, if we're still that high, should we really be reducing it? That's all.
Well, what we did is we allocated it in a different way because exactly what you're saying, we still don't have that report that was asked for 4 months ago. And so we put in the brakes on that until somebody actually shows us where that money went to. And so it seemed irresponsible to just keep pouring money into that particular area until we see what's happening. But that being said, there is more money over into the hazard tree removal for storm response. And then we haven't been using the hazard tree funds out of the culvert money. It hasn't been being allocated. So it's there. We just pulled it back from this part right here.
Okay, I'll go take a look at the CBC stuff then. I'm assuming somewhere in here there's going to be that information or the breakdown of it, because I'll go look at what Jake had in there when he submitted the breakdown for CBC this year. It should be in there for hazard trees.
Thank you, Linda. I
Okay,
think
all done.
Jean, thank you, Linda. Jean, did you have any questions?
No, the last question that I had was fine. I had just a question about where it was all compiled, and he went over that, so I see where that is now. I just haven't had enough time to look at this yet, so
Sure.
but this has been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a question for Brian real quick. Are you raising any of your, I know Joel mentioned that the marina rates are going to go up. Are any of your golfing rates going to go up that have to do with your increase in your revenue?
We don't look at rates until after the year, Linda. So I would say after our golf season, we do a rate evaluation at the end of the season. Our recent trend has been consistently increasing rates. And so I would be surprised if that trend didn't continue. I base the increase revenue projection on my projection for this year. This year, I'm projecting if we maintain the pace that we're on, conservatively, we will hit that number that I've budgeted for next year.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
so it's still in my mind, still a fairly conservative estimate.
Okay. I just wondered if there was a change, and that's what made the change that you were able to increase your revenue. That's all.
Yeah, it's just based on actuals.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? If we don't have more questions on ops, did we want to go into capital and make it a double meeting and possibly not have to go to meet tomorrow?
I vote we keep going. Just personal vote, but
Brian's lit
can I
up.
say hi? Can I say something positive? I really appreciate how these line items are highlighted. when you're speaking. Thank you.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Compliments are nice, Steffi, but don't make Joel's head too big because then we won't see him on camera.
So AJ, are you comfortable with that? I know that there was some more documentation that we were going to put together because we were anticipating that we were going to do this in 2 nights. I thought there'd be more questions, but it's up to you, AJ.
I think we can move forward with it, and capital obviously will probably have some questions and stuff, and we can see how far we get through things, and kind of go from there.
We can follow up with questions later, right? I mean, just because,
Yeah.
again, we've just had this for a limited
course.
time.
Of
That would be
course.
great.
Finance committee will
Yeah.
have a meeting next week, so you'll have the whole week to review this, and we'll be getting the full package, put on the website here for the community, probably tomorrow. And yeah, so finance committee will have their own meeting to go over anything else next week. And then the board will continue to move the process forward as it does in most years.
Hey, AJ, this is the first
yeah,
time
I
I've seen
can-
you. AJ, this is the first time I've seen you without a hat, so I'm glad to see that you've got hair.
I got hair. It's warm, so I can get going on the capital. So just a couple things before we dive into the spreadsheets and those things. The surf spreadsheet, it's the CRRF capital planning is largely built from our reserve study. And just so the community understands, the reserve study is basically a planning tool. It should outline a maintenance plan for all of our facilities. And it should give us useful lives and timelines of when we should be approximately replacing these things and with costs and stuff associated with them, and allows us to plan for these capital needs and these replacements of various components in these buildings. It includes things like HVAC and electrical and painting and all, every building has some different components, but all buildings have some similar components. And so, that gives you kind of an idea of what a reserve study is. We had intended to have a new level 1 reserve study for this budget season, and we had given that task to Glenn when he started and had outlined it as a priority. Unfortunately, that task was not accomplished. At the last board meeting, we came back to the board, and the board approved going back to Schwint to do a level 3 reserve study update, which is required for auditing purposes and our budget. And so one thing that you will see in last year's reserve study and the previous year's SURF capital planning spreadsheets and stuff is you'll see a bunch of really big ticket items, huge $1 million projects, including building replacements and huge refurbishments of interiors and things like that. And those types of items are not really appropriate to be included in a reserve study. The reserve, hold on, I think someone. Oh,
We can
hold
still
on.
hear you.
John saying my phone is
It's buzzing.
It's ringing.
So let me fix that. I'm sorry. That should work better now. Okay, let me figure out where I was at. Basically, these large scale building replacements and stuff, the reserve study is not a building replacement plan. It is a maintenance plan for all of the components that make up a building so that we can maintain our assets moving forward. And so what you'll see some differences in this year's spreadsheet, and we've in anticipation of working with Schwinn to update the level, do a level 3 update, we're going to be removing those types of things off of the reserve study and bringing those components back into the fold, so that we can maintain the buildings that we have and keep them in good working order. So the other thing is yes, we're doing a level 3 with Schwinn this year, but we will be going to get a new level 1 reserve study for next year's budget and capital planning. The current reserve study is not super consistent as far as the components for each building. Some of them have certain things and don't have other things. And it's crucial that we know we have all these components and we factor them in to our capital planning, so that we can have a clear picture of what it's going to cost for our community to maintain the assets that it has. You know, we've watched a number of buildings get torn down over the last few years, and you know, it does not behoove the community to continue on that trajectory. And so I think I'm on my phone. Joel, could you share your screen again and pull up the SURF spreadsheet? My computer was not working for some reason with the sound. I couldn't hear what anyone else was saying.
And can I expand while he's pulling that up too? But, you know, it's not to say that there will never be a day where a building doesn't need to be replaced. We've already witnessed that with and AJ will address it with maintenance. But it's not appropriate, as he said, to put it into this type of reserve study. This is a budgeting, it's a maintenance plan, basically over a 30-year period of time for these components. If it comes down to it and it's not cost efficient at a certain point, and there's a formula for figuring those things out, when we've got like a whole lot of building systems that are starting to fail, you know, we can figure out pretty easy. People that run facilities do this all the time. Buildings last a very long time when they're maintained properly. But we can calculate, does it make sense to keep this building, or does it make sense to replace this building when we reach that point? But again, the goal would be to not reach that point and to maintain what we have. And so, and in that instant, if you do need to replace a building that's going to cost a couple of $1 million or more, that becomes a long range, that becomes a planning process where you either do a special assessment through a vote of the membership, or you could even, again, through a vote of the membership, do a development fund that would be similar to the way we do the reserve studies with capital funding plan for a new project. But they don't belong in here. And they also impact, you know, like with Wekiwa and the reporting on the percentage of funding, the level of funding, it causes our reserves to look incredibly underfunded when in fact they aren't. So by just removing things that these buildings that are non-existent, that shouldn't have been in there in the first place, you'll see a big difference in our funding level.
And additionally, to piggyback on what you were saying, Sonia, taking the replacement cost out and listening to what the community said to us in the long range planning survey, it was clear that people were in favor of making repairs to buildings where possible versus completely demolishing something and starting over and paying an exorbitant amount of money to start from scratch. So we took all of that into consideration when looking at the capital planning, to definitely include the voice of what the community wanted, because ultimately it's the community that's paying for these assets and resources.
Having said that, I agree. But having said that, how do you know, how far ahead do you have to plan if you are going to have to replace the building? You know, you don't want something collapsing or falling apart and then all of a sudden be hit with multi-million-dollar need.
And that's exactly what's yeah, and that's what's going on right now, is that we're coming up with all these surprises of things, big system failures that we were unaware of because they haven't been maintained. So the goal over the next couple of years is to actually evaluate all of those systems, which is what AJ was addressing, is bringing in that level one, reserve study specialists, but we also bringing in engineers and other specialists to look at these things and to help us determine what are those expenses. Like I said, it takes a lot to have to come to the place to replace a building. And right now, at least initially, what we see is we're not there. But again, there's a formula to that that's pretty consistent, and we'll if whatever comes to that, and it's more cost efficient to replace a building as opposed to repair and maintain it, then this board will let the community know that. But it'll be through the advice of the experts that have the ability to actually look at that and determine what's going on with the actual systems inside that building.
So that's getting that's getting put into the budget now to start the audits to do that. Then is that what's going on?
We're doing so this year we don't have time to get a level one. That, like I said earlier, we had asked Glenn to do that, and that didn't materialize. It didn't happen. And so we had to adjust a bit on what our plan was. I had hoped that would be delivered to us for this budget season. I had hoped we would have that done, a few months ago, so that we could have adequately planned, had all of this updated. And so at this point, we're going to do a level 3. We'll work with Schwint to remove those. There's something like roughly 15 million or so. I don't know the exact number offhand, but around $15 million worth of projects in there that were basically replacing buildings as opposed to fixing the components. None of our buildings are in like immediate threat of like just collapsing. We've had structural reports done on like the Barn 8, that gets talked about sometimes. We've had multiple structural reports done from multiple different people that say it's structurally sound. Even the Ice Barn, looking as shoddy as it does sometime out there, it's not like structurally unsound. It needs work, obviously. But the main structure of the building is good. The clubhouse, things like that. We just did a bunch of work in like 5 years ago to the exterior of that building. But that doesn't mean these buildings don't have needs. They certainly do. And we'll kind of go through some of that here in this spreadsheet.
That's okay. That clarifies. I just trying to figure out sort of where things are, and I didn't realize the level 1 was what you were talking about with Glenn and how that got missed. So no, that's great. That's kind of all I needed. Thank you.
Yeah, we kind of did the best we could with what we had. Things weren't delivered, so we scrambled to pull this together.
We do have, good costs with most of this stuff, or we have a prior reserve study that has costs built into it as well for a number of these components. Can people see the spreadsheet that's being shared right now? I have it on my phone, so I
could have made it just a little bit larger.
Yeah, a little bit bigger for those of us with over 40-year-old eyes.
Yeah, so like AJ is saying, Joel's been looking at this for a few years. This is our standard. These are built in there. Then what we do is make a determination of do we need to move these forward, and how pressing are they, based on what's going on currently, and also the feedback that we got from the survey and what the community needs are, and also from talking with staff, because we got a lot of feedback from staff about what's going on with them and what the needs are within the community that we weren't necessarily aware of some of that. So this, we feel really happy and confident that this really addresses like the community's needs, staff's needs, and then our needs as an association moving forward.
And so, you know, you can kind of see up at the top, there's, you know, your kind of yearly dollar totals that we bring in. 2021 is obviously this year. That's the first column there. The projects and the dollar amounts you see in the 2021 column are approved and obligated funds that the board's already approved. So they're projects that are currently underway, or potentially completed and will be closed out this year, when we do that work. And so the main focus obviously will be 2022. And you can kind of see up at the top what our anticipated January 1 carryover for 2022. That factors out all of the funds that we've obligated in 2021. And then there's what's called a board carryover of, I believe it's 600,000 in SURF. That we always basically, it's like the board establishes a minimum that we keep in that account every year. You know, but obviously the goal is to always be adding to your reserves. You know, we obviously will spend money every year on capital projects and doing these things. But the goal is not necessarily always to spend all of your money. Now we have some deferred maintenance needs because we haven't been doing certain things over the last number of years. And so, you know, this 2022 does have, you know, some fairly significant projects in it. And you'll see at the top, you know, in 2022, we have almost a $2 million carryover from this year to next year is what we anticipate. And then the next row, you'll see about $1.2 million being contributed from the dues calculation for next year into the account. We also have a capital reserve holding account, which is based on transfer fees, which 1/4% of every sale goes into that account. And currently that account's sitting at approximately a little over 900,000. And that's factored into the 2022 year there to show where we're at. And then obviously there's interest and stuff accumulated from money sitting in bank accounts. And we obviously have the carryover every year. So you can see we're expected, you know, our expected reserve revenue for 2022 is around 4.7 million there. And so going down the spreadsheet here, our SURF loan repayment is from 2018. That's related to the spit repair at the marina, fire suppression, gangways at the marina. Then there was work done to put the sprung structure up in area Z, and they redid both pools as well with that money. And so that loan is just an ongoing payment that we make and that's what that line item is. And then moving down, you know, into barn 8, which is the dance barn. And the community and the survey overwhelmingly wanted to preserve and maintain the dance barn. And so we've gotten some estimates from P&W already in that 750,000 for the building exterior restoration. That includes siding, roofing, windows, and doors. And, you know, we're working on getting additional estimates as well to ensure that, you know, if we can materialize any additional savings there. And that's obviously one of our big projects. You'll see that the rec corridor is a focus here in the SURF planning. It's obviously been neglected for quite a few years. We have in barn 8, a lot of this stuff, if you look at last year's spreadsheet like this, you'll see, you know, roughly $6.5 million in this spreadsheet for a new design and construction of a new building. And when they did that, they pushed all these components way out into the future because they were putting in these buildings. And so some of these components had to be sucked back into the here and now to be dealt with in a more immediate fashion because they are needed and they should get done. And so you'll see in there we have money both in 2022 and 2023 to deal with some of the various components in there. Putting a fire system in Barn 8, putting a plumbing system repair in there. You see HVAC and electrical system in 2023. And that's, a large part of bringing that building, getting the much needed maintenance that it needs done. The exterior needs work. We need to seal up that building. Some of the siding is no good anymore. And then getting fire suppression system in place could materialize additional revenues that we could see from the barn, being able to rent the barn out for various events and things like that. Plumbing system repair is obviously something we don't need our plumbing leaking. And that was a component that got pushed out because they were just planning a replacement cost instead. And this kind of the same thing with the electrical system and the HVAC system. All those things got pushed out way into the future because the plan was just to replace the building. But the membership voted those things down. The revitalization plan was not approved by the membership. And so we're not moving forward with that as the plan. And the survey has helped us, make some more educated decisions on what the community feels the needs are. And then as you kind of go through this spreadsheet, I'll mostly focus on kind of 2022 and 2023, for now. Some of this stuff, we have to factor in how much money we have in reserves, how much we're going to collect, and what all these things are going to cost. Tennis courts have been being pushed, here and there. There's adult center building where the library is currently located, and Sun Valley has use of portion of that building as well. The pools and stuff were largely already replaced. Most of that stuff has been dealt with over the last few years.
We did add the replacement sauna is in there too for this for 2022.
Yep.
Yep.
The
And
sauna,
then
the sauna in the gym,
in
Yes.
the gym.
because there's 2 saunas.
And so kind of as you go down this spreadsheet, you'll see, the plans for next year is to, the plans for next year and the following year are to deal with Barn 8 and the dance barn and do the maintenance there. We have a number of things with the clubhouse as well. There's a HVAC system there's two systems in the clubhouse for HVAC. One of them is new within the last couple of years, and the other one is quite old. And so we'll be looking at those replacement costs as well. And those are both shown there in the clubhouse section. And then as you kind of go down.
And it should, we moved it, but I think your doc is a little earlier, but yeah, the plumbing system for the clubhouse also will be addressed this next year too.
Yeah. And then kind of keep going down. We, as far as the golf course goes, we have a number of things that we kind of pushed out to 2023 at this point in time. We need to have more discussions with Brian and Jeremy about some of those things as we do the level 3 update for this year, and get those kind of programmed in their appropriate places. And that's, you kind of see there's like Austin Creek repair, some bridges, bunkers, cart paths, things like that out in 2023. And then if you keep going down in the maintenance building, so currently our maintenance staff uses the maintenance shop for all of their needs. And it's not really adequate for like their offices and, a break room and things like that. It's really just a shop for doing repair work and storing equipment and things like that. And so we have some money for 2022 to address bringing in and adding a small building there for basically their offices. It would house laundry, break rooms, allow them to store, actual, like clothing type gear, things like that, and keep the shop as a shop, and then have some office component for the maintenance crews. And then if you keep going down, we get into the marina, and some of we have a marina outdoor amenities replacement. And that mostly is dealing with, we obviously have a large waiting list on our kayak rental space. So looking at adding additional kayak racks, which would also materialize some additional revenues for the association from renting those things. And then, and as you kind of keep going down, then the last thing in 2022 is the ice barn. And, we've had some discussions with staff, our maintenance staff, and we're looking at finding ways to rehab that building. It is structurally sound, even though the roof and the siding don't look so great. And so that money largely would be looking at figuring out a way, or planning a project to redo the roof, any siding that we would need, and being able to figure out a way to utilize that facility again for the community. Largely, it's been fenced up. It's housed, a whole bunch of maintenance stuff in the past. They used to put, before they put the sprung structure up, they kept a lot of the winter plowing and snow removal supplies and stuff in it. And so we're looking at ways to get that barn back open to the community. Maybe it's additional, sports courts. It can also materialize revenue for us in terms of renting out the facility, for weddings or things like that. And then as you kind of keep going down, one thing that Josh and the communications committee has been working on with John is revamping our website and figuring out a plan for that. And so we have some money set aside capitally for doing that work. You can see the Barn 8 sauna replacement there in that. And then if you keep going down, we talked to Brian regarding golf equipment, and he had a couple of needs. There was a fairway unit and 4 different mowers there in the golf equipment that are looking like they'll need to be replaced next year. They're nearing their end of lifespan. And then in discussing with maintenance, the roadside mower is like a roadside mower. I think it has like a backhoe attachment on it as well. Is getting old and is up for replacement as well. As far as, and then defibrillator replacement is scheduled as well in our reserve study. And, that's kind of the bulk of the 2022 stuff. Some of the stuff, has been pushed out to allow us to properly plan. It's been pushed out to 2023 or 2024. As we do the update to the level 3 with Schwint, we'll address some of that. And then even more so, for next year's budget, when we get that level 1, that will allow us to really get a better handle on, some of the other components that, aren't as obvious or maybe aren't needed right at this moment for other facilities. And, I think the big thing that you'll see, I think the big thing you'll notice if you go back and look at last year's SURF spreadsheet and this year's is we did a 5-year projection at this point in time because we are going to go get the level 3 update and then get a new level 1. Once we get a new level 1, we'll be able to more adequately put together a 10-year projection again, and really address what the true costs of maintaining all of our facilities are. This reserve study is lacking in that in some ways, and so the big thing that you'll see is by removing those large, and Sonia kind of alluded to this earlier, removing those large scale multi-million-dollar projects takes our reserves from being severely underfunded to being very well funded, and adequately funded, and large part the level 1 that we'll get could change some of that, and so we need to do some more legwork to get that going and figure out what are we missing in this current reserve study that's not being accounted for, and make sure we're accounting for all of the various components and all the different buildings, and so some of this stuff will adjust as we get that new reserve study. But you will see that we are being able to actually contribute to our reserves, and over the course of the 5 years, and we're not just depleting them in their entirety, so we will be prepared, for future maintenance needs that arise, whether they're expected or unexpected. And so I think it would probably be best to ask for questions related to SURF rather than diving into roads necessarily right away, if there is any.
Me.
Go ahead, Linda.
So if I look at the stuff for 2022 and the numbers that are included in this, are these realistically amounts that we will be spending? Because some of these are new items that weren't on prior reserve studies, like that office addition and the rehab of barn 8 of the ice barn. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we've been discussing with maintenance staff, and we've been putting together some of those costs and stuff like that. And so, yeah, they are planning level estimates, obviously. But, we believe that they're adequate to do the work that we need to do.
Yeah, we've had preliminary discussion, and there's a crew that's scheduled to come out next week to give us more solid bid on the ice barn, and then also we'll get a second bid on the barn 8 refurbishment, whatever you want to call it, and then as AJ already mentioned, the barn 8 numbers came from P&W already, but we'd like to have another source on that one too. And then what else? You mentioned one other thing. I forgot what it was.
Just the new things that are on there, like the office addition down in.
Oh, that's a real. So what that that would be like a construction type trailer. So the cost for the trailer, the prefab building itself, is approximately $75,000. And then what you have is then you have to, get the foundation set up, the permitting, the plumbing, the electricity, and all of those things that'll have to go into like permanently siting that building.
Do you know where it's gonna be in areas? I guess I'm concerned because of the creek down there.
Yeah, and we've been
You have a
talking with
conditional
maintenance.
use permit that dictates that.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and so maintenance
So
kind of
there's
the
already
maintenance
a
crew has a
footprint
plan.
approved.
Yeah.
Okay, And AJ, did I hear you, did I understand that you said that when you look at the fire system for the barn, we are gonna look at suppression, updating and including suppression into the barn?
Yeah, that's what that component is.
Okay. The
And
only
that number's from the reserve study.
The only thing I would comment on, and it's the future, and I realize that the board only gets to pick 1 year at a time, is in the adult center for 2024, you're gonna repair the siding, but you're gonna paint the exterior in 2023. You may want to look at that and reverse those two. It's just little things like that. I guess I know that because the adult center, I think, is supposed to have been painted since about 2018, and it just keeps getting pushed out and keeps getting worse every year because nothing gets done. But then I noticed that we're kind of upside down with painting and replacing the exterior siding.
Linda, don't you paint stuff before you replace the siding?
No.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
It's just one of those weird things.
Yeah, no, I mean, in our efforts to rearrange things and, you know, remove things that didn't make sense to be in there because we were repairing and replacing components instead of renovating, some things may have gotten, you know, missed. So I appreciate you pointing that out.
The other thing I'd like to ask of you, since you're looking at barn 8, and we've been talking about that for a long time, there's nothing about ADA in here for that barn.
So that,
Or is
I
that
understood
included?
it, that had been addressed previously with being able to exit out the front. That's at least the way P&W, I mean, we can double check everything, but there had been some representation that we're pretty much in compliance on that, but we can check. We can.
Oh, I had, you know, our other conversations were that we weren't ADA compliant. That's why I was asking about that.
No, I appreciate it. And then just the other issue too about pushing these out, as AJ was talking about too, is just because we don't have that level 1, and once we have it, that's going to adjust a whole lot of those things after, you know, 2023 or into 2023 and above. We'll come out and totally reforecast this, or the board will come out and reforecast it along with Joel as soon as that document's prepared.
Yeah, but you're going to have to do 2022, and that's what you're going to have to be dealing. That's why I asked if these were fairly hard numbers for what you were planning on for 2022.
Thanks, Linda. I think Brian had his hand up.
Yeah, I was really looking for and hoping to find ways to differentiate this budget from the budget that I voted against last year. And I'm really pleased to say that I've found those, and I appreciate the work that you three have done, at least in this portion. I won't touch on roads yet, but I really appreciate the effort to heal the exterior of the barn 8. And as I've been told by folks that have worked here for a long time on my tour of the facilities, that this some of these repairs had been let go for years, and they would have been much cheaper had they been taken care of back then. But I appreciate that, and I think it will save us a huge special assessment in the future. And also appreciate we'll talk about roads, but I appreciate the extra money going to roads as well. So thanks.
Any other questions on?
I have a question.
Yes, go for it.
Okay, so the ice barn, I think it was 275. What, maybe you don't know yet, but what do you anticipate that to cover? What is that going
would
to do
be
for the ice barn?
Siding and roofing.
Siding and roofing. Okay.
So the ice barn's an interesting thing. It's really just a pole barn, and it wasn't built at the same time as the barn 8. It was built later, and it is just a pole barn. And interestingly enough, underneath that really bad roof is a metal roof and metal siding. So it's as AJ was saying, was structurally sound. It just needs some additional reinforcement in areas that's been identified in the past. And, but because it's a pole barn, it's not as complicated as what you would be looking at in like the dance barn. So we feel pretty confident that we can, replace that roof and then reinforce underneath where the old metal roofing is, and then just reside at a relatively reasonable cost.
Yeah.
Right, and then the plans to make it usable for something, right? I mean, that'd be the only reason to spend money.
It's not going to be like a barn 8 use or anything like that. You'd be looking at maybe some covered sports courts, an area that could be rented out, for various events and things like that. It used to be a hockey rink. There's still basketball courts and everything, up in it at this time. So it'd be more of a recreational use. Maybe it could house, some sort of farmer's market or things like that in the future. Those types of things need to be discussed and planned a bit more, but they can't really be materialized until we have a building that could actually house, that type of thing.
There's still a Zamboni in there.
Right.
Thank you, Jean. Anyone else with capital questions?
I'll go. I just want to say I'm so glad that you guys are using the survey to make a lot of these choices. It's just so bonkers to me that people were complaining about that survey so much, and I just don't understand why. So it's great to actually take community input and put that to work. I also want to say, Kim, you keep saying you're kind of scrapping things together, but you put a lot of hard work into this, and I don't think you need to, excuse yourself that way or anything. You can tell that you've put a lot of work into this, so thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
And I think it's important to reiterate too that the survey mechanism is an ongoing, thing that we'll be doing yearly. We built questions into there to give us baseline data on the satisfaction regarding our amenities and facilities, but then we also put in there capital planning and just community planning questions as well. And those capital and community planning questions will change as we, move through our reserve study, and as as needs crop up or ideas surface and things like that, we can continuously year after year ask the community for their input on the future.
The nice thing about the survey is that it reiterated, number one, that how much everybody loves Sudden Valley and how beautiful it is and how happy, they are to call it home. And the other thing is that, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But I just think it's really important to remember that this community has more in common than, what we see sometimes on social media, and what our desires and hopes are all the same. And we're all very passionate because we all care very much about Sudden Valley. And that survey showed that. It was a beautiful thing. I think it's come up many times. There were over 5,000 write-in responses, which is incredible to see something like that. That's how much everybody cared. And there was so much input, but the reality is most people were really happy. We were surprised, they were really consistently happy with the amenities we currently have, right? So it wasn't like, I want this new thing, I want that thing. It's like, I just want to take care of what we have and maintain that. And let's focus on the beauty and the aesthetics and everything. And so that was a really nice, that was a nice thing. We asked the hard questions, and I'm proud of that because there's so much, from the time we've all lived here, we hear those same questions over and over, and it's speculation. You know, people don't want this, or you know, whatever. And it was really nice because we asked those questions and we found out. No, for instance, I'm going to use golf since Brian's here, but there's so much speculation about golf. But in reality, it wasn't that people want golf to go away. They just want to. What we saw, there were multiple answers, and the relationship between golf and the community needs to change, right? And we know that, and part of that, you know, we have to find how we do that, right? There was a lot of things, and we talked to Brian about this too, because, you know, like for instance, there's people that wanted to be able to access the paths more. Well, okay, but then there's that offset of he loses about every couple of hours or whatever of doing that, he loses about $15,000 annually for cutting that out. And so those are things that we need to start like communicating with the community so that they understand, and those relate, you know, we, like I said, just building that relationship, and how do we work with what we have. Same thing with Marina. We had no idea until literally 2 weeks ago that there was one staff person basically down there part-time, you know, through the busiest time of the year. So that's all been adjusted. Rachel's working on that, and they'll start to be staff down there 7 days a week between 12 and 5 every day. And AJ will go more into that, but there's more money. And as you know, Brian, with the the kayaks and the canoe, there's a lot of opportunity with the marina, just like with golf. You know, there's a lot of opportunity because of the unique location of Sudden Valley, and we need to start making use of that. And I think the survey really emphasized how important outdoor recreation is to everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. I'm gonna let AJ get back. I appreciate your sentiments, and I totally ran on the platform that, you know, if this place, if we get the things done fiscally right out here, you know, my platform was I envision there being a waiting list for people who live in Sudden Valley. It's not going to be the redheaded stepchild of Bellingham, but people are going to want to live out here, and there's going to be like, oh wow, that's a really nice community. They have their act together, and they have all these wonderful amenities. And so that's where I'm heading, and I hope this is the first step. But I wanted to ask if there were any other questions of AJ on the capital portion before we go to roads.
All right, well, let's move on down to roads then, Joel. So same kind of thing, you know, 2021 projects are currently either obligated and underway or obligated and completed, and those things will be closed out as they get completed either this year or next year. And which largely what you'll see here is in 2022, you know, the big thing here is, you know, roads are important to all of us. We need our roads to get to our houses, and that is priority number one for everybody. And we can't get to any of our amenities without our roads either. And they're obviously one of the most crucial infrastructure items, and they're a necessity. They're not a want. They need to be done. And we have a lot of roads in some fairly significant disrepair. What we have here is you'll see we're, you know, putting together in the top portion there, you'll see some on-call engineering, some bridge inspection stuff. But you'll see a capital improvement plan for putting together a new 10-year. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you there for a second, but we can hear you now.
I don't know what happened there. Sorry. And so, you know, one thing you'll notice here is our roads surfacing and stuff is just kind of outlined by gate. It says main and secondary residential roads. You know, if you look at like what the county does and things like that, they tell you exactly what roads they're going to be working on. what roads have issues that need to be addressed. They'll tell you what mileposts that they're going to be doing paving from and to, and stuff like that. And we'll be working next year to put together an improvement plan that better outlines that stuff. You'll see, for 2022 and 2023, we have funds obligated to do road projects in Gate 5 and 28 and 3, 9, and 13. And then 2023, big projects for Gate 1 and 2. And then up above, there's also just some additional funds, for road surfacing for 2023 as well. As we work with an engineering firm to put together a new capital improvement plan, we'll be able to better outline exactly what roads are being worked on. I've driven around and, I do this type of work, in my job. I've driven around a number of the roads. Gate 3 has a number of serious issues on roads like Green Hill and Cascade Lane and those various steep roads that go up and down from Sun Valley Drive and Harborview and things like that. Gate 5 and 28 obviously have some steep roads and have some issues as well. And in Gate 1 and 2, they have issues as well, and we need to adequately address those issues in our capital improvement plan, while also then putting together a maintenance or what's called a pavement preservation plan, so that our roads can be on a regular cycle for either receiving the micro seal surfacing that we used a couple years ago, or an HMA overlay. It'll depend upon the type of road, and what its needs are. I live in a cul-de-sac. Does a cul-de-sac need an HMA overlay? Probably not. Only 8 of us live down there. But on our main road, should we be looking at more of an overlay? Probably, but our governing documents actually say that we need an engineer to put together this plan. And so, similar to getting a new level 1 reserve study, this is another component of that. And when you go down, and we'll get this at roads, the drainage, we do have that plan that specifically outlines and identifies exact culverts and their needs for design and construction and estimated planning level estimate costs and things like that. And so, it is a priority to make sure our roads are maintained. And you'll see in this that, they need to get put on a cycle as well, where, every, pavement preservation plan, depending upon what type of methodology you use, is different, but they need to be on a cycle. Things that get micro sealed, well, that's like a 5 to 10 year, plan. And then it needs to be redone. If you lay an overlay down, that's more like a 20-year, timeline before it should start falling apart theoretically, and things like that. You can move down and you'll see Southern Court has had some significant issues over the last year. There was a large slide out there this last winter, and there were some significant funds put into that. And there is still some additional work that will likely need to be done there. And so we have some additional funds planned for the next couple of years for that. We have the removal of the Barn 7 foundation in there. I think we can all agree that we're tired of looking at rebar sticking out of concrete with a giant fence around it down at our rec corridor. And so eliminating that and dealing with that is a necessity. If you look at then there's also some required stormwater mitigation project. That's something that the county, it's a requirement from the county for a project that we did previously. They did I believe Joe talked with them, because when he came on, it was supposed to be done, and they allowed him to push that project off a little bit so that it could be properly addressed and planned. And so that's something we'll have to deal with. And then we also have money in there for the marina parking lot. We have documentation that outlines conceptually ways we could better utilize the parking configuration down there and getting more. Our marina has a waiting list for both wet slips and dry slips, alike. And it's a commodity that people in our community like to use. Many of us moved here because of the lake, and being so close to the lake is a big draw for a lot of people. And so, that's kind of a planning level estimate there, but looking at what we can do to reconfigure that parking lot to either, increase the number of spaces that we can fit in there, make the traffic and everything flow better, make sure there's adequate parking. Some of the issues we hear is, busy days, heat wave. I take my boat out and I come back and someone's parked their car in my boat spot. We're looking at money to try to address some of those situations. Obviously, that will help us materialize some additional revenues down at the marina as well, and stuff like that. And then, you can kind of see moving out into the future, they have additional road resurfacing projects, out in the future. Our capital improvement plan up at the top, will help us kind of better allocate those funds with a new 10-year plan. And that's and if you look and you compare this to last year's, the main things you'll see is like there was some $5 million set aside for paving parking lots at the marina and the rec corridor. And that's just a significant amount of money to spend on parking lots. Also triggers significant stormwater infrastructure requirements and stormwater treatment requirements due to the watershed rules and restrictions. And so those types of things need to be better evaluated, whether that's actually a cost-effective way to go about things. Largely this stuff is operated, just fine, as a gravel parking lot. And that doesn't mean there can't be improvements made, drainage improvements and stuff to help alleviate some, muddy areas and things like that. And, we have money set aside for the marina parking lot configuration for that. And then we have pothole money, yearly scheduled out for things that come up because, pavement preservation plan doesn't stop potholes from forming, but if we have money to adequately get to those things immediately, then it just makes our pavement preservation last that much longer. And it will, it'll allow us to get by at least until that next cycle comes up. And then as you kind of go down, then you move into the stormwater and drainage. And this is all based on a plan that Wilson put together, I believe, a number of years ago for us. And it just outlines a number of culverts that have been identified as being in the worst condition. And there's still quite a few left on that plan that needs to get done. And sometime probably, next year, or the year after, we're going to need to start talking about an update to this plan as well. The nice thing about all these culverts being replaced is we replace them with materials that are not corrugated metal. Corrugated metal culverts were all the rage back when this place was developed. Well, they rust, they rot out, and they cause your road to fail. While replacing them all with plastic culverts of some sort, there's a variety of different kinds, increases the lifespan of those culverts significantly, potentially to the point where as long as nothing physically damages them, they could last, for significantly longer periods of time than the metal ones ever did. And, there's a number of projects obviously in 2021. Those ones are being worked on. They're being, they're being done. The culvert 315 and culvert 182 are both culverts that were planned to be done this year, but permitting and utility conflicts, the funds have been obligated by the board, but planning or permitting and utility conflicts have cause the need to do the construction next year. And then we have culvert 25 scheduled as well for next year. And then you kind of see an ongoing pattern after that where you design a culvert one year and then construct it the next year. And you kind of see that cycle shift in that way moving forward. And there's some culverts that maybe need to be replaced with bridges in there and things like that. And then at the very bottom, you have your ditches, culverts, and swales money, which is the CVC program that was approved by the membership, I believe, in 2016 as a capital amount. It's there to fund those things. You know, it's not the most appropriate place for that money. It's funding staff and things like that, which is not typical of capital. One thing the board will probably be looking at this year is trying to figure out a way to bring that into our ops budget for following years so that it can actually be utilized for the staffing purposes that the membership approved it for. That work is not capital work, really. It is operational work, but you know, it's just the reality of the way it was presented. The membership did see it to be an important need. And so they voted for it to be addressed. But it's not the appropriate pool of money to pull that from. And it's quite awkward that we have to have a capital request to approve funding to bring staff on board. And so we'll look into that here potentially for this AGM. And it's kind of the same thing as like the rec special assessment. It's, a special assessment really should be funding capital projects, but then we're funding an operations with it. And then when the special assessment is gone, all of a sudden that operations money is gone. So next year's board is going to have a fun task of trying to figure out, how to deal with that special assessment ending and what that'll look like, and things like that. And so, that's kind of the gist of the roads and culverts. Is there any questions?
I got one. So 2 things. When are they going to start working on Southern Court this year for that work of putting up the wall and stuff that's supposed to happen, doing the shotcrete and all that sort of stuff?
I talked to Tyler earlier this week, and he said that August 2nd they'll start the rock bolting work, and then it'll follow up with the shotcrete, and then the jersey barrier and the repaving is part of a different project that will be moving forward as well.
The other thing that I don't know, and maybe you can share with everybody, is what's going to happen when Barn 7 foundations come down. Is there any definite plan for that, or has Parks and Rec been looking at it, or anything's better than what's there? Let's put it that way. But
it is my understanding that we have missed our window to be able to replace that structure. And so at this point, the removal of the foundation is the first priority, so that we can, utilize that space again. And so, some of that, what gets done in that space is not fully materialized yet.
Okay. Haven't we already, how do I say this? But isn't the money to remove that foundation, isn't that already some committed money that we have from way back when?
I believe that's
Probably answer that question.
I believe that there was some money when they removed the Rotunda Foundation. But I'm not sure if any of that money is still available. I there's no open capital projects that I'm aware of that have funds for that.
Joel, isn't there some for the Barn 7 Foundation?
Actually, I'm pulling up right now. Hold on.
It's an old project.
Originally, that line item had remove Barn 7 and Rotunda Foundation.
Yeah.
But obviously the Rotunda Foundation has been removed,
Mhm.
but the Barn 7 one was not. And I don't believe that Rotunda project is still open anymore. I haven't seen it on our capital spreadsheets over the last year.
So there's in roads, there's Barn 7 Rotunda Foundation removal design. And there's still like $34,340 that could be spent out of it. It was originally approved for $51,072 and only $16,732 has been spent against it.
And that's open still though?
Yeah.
That one is
Close
still
that out. I don't remember seeing that on our capital spreadsheets as being open.
this like this one would have shown up on the last one that went to the board. This is one that I asked at the end. I asked Glenn if he wanted this one closed out, and he felt we should keep it open.
Hey, we should found money. Don't complain.
I
Yeah,
know,
we just,
that's great.
what it is
news.
that we have different documents than what than what Joel has. That's why AJ's some of our stuff doesn't look exactly the same as some of the internal documents. But yeah, so cool, 35,000, awesome.
Good job, Linda, remembering that.
There's some of these that hang around kind of like elephants in the room.
Any other questions for roads?
Pretty soon.
Well, we certainly, if you can't think of anything tonight, because we did have a short window to look over the information, the Finance Committee is meeting a week from tonight, so that gives you an additional week to look at the information. We are available by email, and Sutton Valley Finance Committee at suttonvalley.com. And this conversation is to be continued with the Finance Committee, and then going to the board, and then also our community town hall next month. So this process is moving forward and ongoing, and I appreciate everyone's time this evening. Milwaukee won the playoff game. They just finished up 2-2, so we have another game on Saturday. Yes. And
So we're done, and we're not. So tomorrow night we're not continuing, right?
Correct. We covered all of the information this evening. Unless you want to meet, Sonia, you and I can show up in Zoom.
Joel has to be there.
We haven't spent enough time on this, so we can just keep it moving along. But if no one else has any, Callie says, thank you for the information and clarification. It was helpful and much appreciated. And if there are no additional questions or comments, then I move for us to adjourn at 8:43 p.m.
Are we taking owner comments or not on this kind of meeting?
We didn't have it on the agenda, so
I
shall
didn't
we?
know. I didn't know what we were doing. Sorry.
It is not on the agenda.
Okay.
I don't recall it being on the agenda last year, but Joel, is that something that we do?
We'll be going to the town hall too, so.
Okay.
And the community hasn't really been, this is
They
the
didn't get a
first
copy.
presentation,
Yeah.
so they need to get a copy. I think
I'm
it
so
probably
sorry.
wouldn't be productive.
Try to post this tomorrow, right? I'll send an email out to get this information posted to the website for the community. So with no further questions, I move to adjourn the meeting at 8:44 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.